Welcome to Navigate Your Cloud Journey. I'm your host, Jeff Tunn, Intervision's Strategic IT Advisor. In this three-part webcast series, we're going to explore your cloud journey from the perspective of the CIO and the impacts on his or her people. We began in part one, Transforming Your Team, with the steps you need to take to prepare your team for the journey ahead. In part two, Keeping the Lights On, we discuss the challenges you face while on the journey and the need to maintain both your new cloud environment as well as your legacy environments. Part 3 of our series looks at ways you can jumpstart your journey by leveraging AWS managed services in the aptly titled webcast, Jumpstarting with AMS. Whether you are in the planning stages or are already well on your way on your cloud journey, unless you are a born in the cloud company, you have a traditional environment that must be supported and maintained, even if for an interim period. This environment could be on premises, colo, virtualized, bare metal, or a combination of all those. Aside from the technical complexities of managing multiple environments, you also have the challenge of staffing the management of these environments. How do you staff for the support and maintenance of your non-cloud environments? What challenges will you face? What are some strategies you can use to mitigate the risk? In this installment of Navigate Your Cloud Journey, we are going to explore keeping the lights on, staffing the management of the legacy environments in the age of cloud. Let's begin by looking at some of the challenges you may be faced with while on your journey, looking at these challenges through the lens of the impact on staff. We saw in our first webcast, Transforming Your Team, the new skills that will be required in the cloud. Your first challenge may be in deciding if individuals on your team can realistically be expected to support both environments. For example, in your cloud environment, you may be implementing a DevOps approach. It is likely that this process would not fit well with your existing workloads. There are other significant differences between managing a cloud environment and managing a legacy environment. Many of those differences will manifest themselves as skills gaps, gaps you will need to close. Resources are scarce. This applies to both sides of your hybrid environment. For your cloud infrastructure, there just may not be enough resources available that know and understand the cloud. Training can take time. Searching for cloud engineers can be somewhat like searching for unicorns. You need the skills of a tenured systems engineer with the knowledge of the full range of possibilities of the public cloud's native services and tooling, and an understanding of a DevOps approach to managing configurations and infrastructure, and software deployment and integration, all in the same person. On the legacy side of the coin, finding engineers who are skilled in maintaining on-premises infrastructure is going to get harder and harder as our schools churn out more and more cloud architects. Remember the story from Webcast 1, Transforming Your Team? The story was of an engineer that was challenged by his boss to find a job description that did not include cloud. Just as he was unsuccessful, you may become unsuccessful in finding the talent you need. If you can find someone with the skill set you need, they may be more interested in the bright, shiny object of the cloud than spending months or years maintaining legacy platforms. The team that is left to maintain the legacy environment may feel left behind. They may feel irrelevant or undervalued, underappreciated. How do you keep them motivated? How do you help them feel appreciated and valued? How do you incent them to stay when all the cool kids are on the cloud project? I've already mentioned the impact of implementing a DevOps culture versus a more traditional culture and set of processes. Operating in those two worlds where one world is made up of specialists and silos, and the other is a blended approach to continuous integration and continuous deployment, would make it almost impossible for a single person or team of people to live within both. In addition to the obvious differences between DevOps and traditional approaches, many of your processes, from change management and security to overall governance, may be different for workloads running on different platforms. Chances are good the tools your team have been using to manage the environments are not the same tools that will be used in the cloud environment. Many cloud platforms have their own flavor of management software and tools. While the functions may be similar, the UI may be vastly different. While you are on the journey, you may need to develop integrations between cloud applications and legacy applications. Those integrations will need to be maintained and supported. Does the cloud team do this? Or does the staff supporting the legacy environment maintain them? How do these two teams share knowledge and coordinate and collaborate? Two significant areas that will be different in the two architectures are disaster recovery and security. Recovering workloads running on a cloud platform will use different tools and different processes than recovery in a more traditional environment. Some of the DR use cases and scenarios you need to consider may also be different in each environment. Security policies and the procedures will need to be reviewed and adapted to the cloud platform. This adaptation leads to differences, at least in the implementation layer of policy, and perhaps in the surrounding processes themselves. There are also impacts on the service desk staff. They will need to understand the cloud to be able to provide support to your broader organization. There will be differences in provisioning, access, security, maintenance, triage, and troubleshooting. Knowledge base articles will need to be updated to ensure level 1 support staff understands the new world. As incidents escalate, triage and troubleshooting across multiple environments will become difficult and may require specialization within the service desk team. An area that often gets overlooked is vendor management. As your cloud journey continues, you will undoubtedly form relationships with new vendors, or at the very least, with different divisions at existing vendors. Some of the relationships you have with existing vendors may change as you come to rely on them less and less during your journey. At some point, you may cease to do business with them altogether. Your processes for onboarding and offboarding vendors will need to be defined for your vendor management team to efficiently handle these changes. You should also consider these changes could impact strong relationships between individuals on your team and individuals at the vendor. Remember, vendors are people too. You may need to be sensitive to these changing relationships. Before we discuss strategies for keeping the lights on, there are at least a couple of major decision points to consider when identifying the strategies that work for you. Unless you are migrating to the cloud in a big bang approach, you will find yourself in a hybrid environment with some workloads in the cloud and some workloads on-prem or in colo or in a hosting environment. The question you need to ask yourself is this: is this a pit stop on your journey, or is this your destination? In other words, how long do you anticipate being in a hybrid architecture? A month? A quarter? A year? Longer? Always? Or at least for the foreseeable future? The shorter the pit stop, the more your staff may be able to straddle both environments. Pit stops longer than a handful of months will begin to take a toll on your team members and ultimately on your project. A related question is, what is the season of your legacy environment? Is it full-on winter and therefore frozen to any but the most urgent changes? Or is it spring and in full bloom, still being modified and extended? I've always said the only way to ensure the stability of a system is to never change it. The more changes, the more instability. The more instability, the more support. The more support, the more staff to provide that support. On the other hand, it will be more difficult to attract and retain talent to support a frozen system. No one likes to babysit applications and systems that are being sunsetted. As we begin to unpack various strategies for keeping the lights on, we will discuss four broad approaches. One team doing both, split teams with one managing cloud and one managing the traditional environments, a hybrid of the two. Hey, you're in a hybrid architecture. Why not address with a hybrid team approach? And lastly, working with a partner to provide support of either of the environments. Regardless of the approach to your staffing model, we highly recommend a centralized governance approach. In other words, governance is one area you do not want to split. Too many decisions will impact both the cloud and the legacy environments. Maintain a strong centralized governance structure. While you are on your cloud journey, now is a good time to revisit your SLAs, both internal and external. Rather than traditional uptime and response SLAs, consider incorporating XLAs into your governance. XLAs are experience level agreement. An XLA is more about how the users of your services experience your service. These go deeper than the customer satisfaction survey we all use while closing a ticket. Think of a restaurant. The food might be great, it might be delivered on time, but if the staff is rude, the music is too loud, and the lighting is too low, it might not be a great experience. In the first webcast in this series, we discussed the importance of having a communication plan. I'm going to stress that again here. You need a strong communication plan, a continuous communication plan in which you conduct full staff meetings so everyone, regardless of the platform that they support, are hearing the same message at the same time, multiple times. Your plan should include periodic updates to your peers on the leadership team and the company executives. The communication should include an update on the people, not just the technology. Finally, I will reiterate my challenge from Webcast 1. Meet one-on-one with your team at least once a year for 30 minutes. If your team has more than 50 people on it, meet with at least 50 across all levels of your organization. As you embark on your cloud journey, I recommend you develop a staffing plan. This plan will become a part of the message you communicate to the audiences you identified in your communication plan. You will need a staffing plan to obtain top-level buy-in to the overall cloud initiative. Unless you perform your entire cloud migration with your existing staff, you are going to have funding needs related to staffing. You may experience an increase in headcount during your cloud journey, and you will need support in your budget for those increases. The staffing plan should describe the approach you will use to support the hybrid environments for the entire time you plan to be in those hybrid environments. It should also include all aspects of the approach you plan to use. Roy Atkinson, CEO of Clifton Butterfield, suggests using the acronym VERSA. V, vision. What is your vision for staffing? I, incentives. What incentives will you need to offer? R, resources. What resources, human and otherwise, will you need? S, skills. What skills will you need from your team and where are the gaps? A, actions. What actions do you need to take to turn the vision into reality? The single team approach is one in which your existing team is expected to learn cloud, perform migrations, including lift and shifts, refactors, and redesign, while at the same time supporting the legacy environment. Even with a strong partner at your side, this approach is only viable for relatively small overall workloads. To maintain a good work life balance for your team, you should consider some strategic new hires to help with the increase in workload during the journey. This, of course, could be done through staff augmentation as opposed to direct hires. As mentioned earlier, your staffing plan, and therefore your communication plan, should include funding to cover the increase in staffing. Your communication plan to your staff should paint the picture of your cloud journey in such a way they can see the vision and may therefore be willing to endure some short term pain for the long term gain. The split team approach entails assigning part of your staff to the cloud journey initiatives and part of your staff to the existing environments. As in the single team approach, you may need additional hires in both environments. Be sure your plan includes those hires and the skills you will be filling with them. If your vision is to be in the hybrid environment for a defined period of time, you will need to consider a couple of key things to keep the staff assigned to the existing environment engaged. As they begin to see their colleagues learning about cloud and gaining new skills, they will become concerned for their future. As you paint the picture of your vision, be sure each member of your team sees themselves in the future state. If you have staff who won't be in the future state, make that clear as well and provide incentives for them to stay. Those incentives could be bonuses, training opportunities, or job placement assistance when winding down. Providing a well defined career path can also mitigate some of the risks of attrition. One of the CIOs whose stories we shared in part one laid out a career path for their team that included hiring into the service desk, being trained and then promoted to traditional engineering, then being trained and eventually promoted to cloud engineering. Remember the laggards we discussed in transforming your cloud journey? The people on your team that are reluctant and resistant to change? We talked in that webcast about not allowing them to slow down your journey. Assigning them to the existing environment team is a great place for those staff members. It will give them ample time to adjust to the new world, or not. In the hybrid approach, rather than a one size fits all approach, each team within IT is addressed independently. The service desk, for example, could use the single team approach, while the engineering team could use the split team approach. The networking team is another team that may be able to use the single team approach. Yes, they still have new skills to learn and new ways of thinking to adapt to as they learn cloud networking, but straddling both worlds could be an advantage. For each team, the staffing plan should address the points I mentioned in both the single team approach and the split team approach. In both the hybrid team approach and the split team approach, you need to keep in mind where the institutional domain knowledge lies within your organization. I've seen countless projects stall or even fail because the employees that had the deepest domain knowledge were placed on the teams supporting the legacy environments and were not readily available to the cloud project team. One CIO I spoke to recently was brought in to rescue a failing project. Their predecessor had been unable to get the initiative over the finish line. Within a few days on the job, the CIO realized the person with the most domain knowledge was not on the cloud project, but rather maintaining the legacy environment. Additionally, the cloud team was located in a different facility and rarely interacted with the keeping the lights on team. Seeing the problem, they shifted the resource and got the project back on track. It is important to provide opportunities for these teams to interact and to collaborate. Not only would this have mitigated the issue for that CIO, but it also helps the keeping the lights on team feel a part of the broader mission of the organization. Chances are you are working with a partner to help you navigate your cloud journey. If you haven't selected a partner yet, Intervision would love the opportunity to earn your trust. Working with a partner can be a great way to navigate your journey. Their team can work closely with your team, which enhances your team's knowledge, while at the same time leveraging their institutional knowledge. You may recall my recommendation in the last webcast to use an embedded approach, where your team and the partner's team work side by side throughout the journey. But what of the legacy environment? In the partner approach, you partner with an organization to provide support and maintenance on the existing environment while your team, or most of them, works on the cloud initiatives. Depending on the partner you choose for your cloud journey, the legacy partner could be the same organization or an entirely different one. When selecting partners, I recommend getting a feel for the partner's culture during your due diligence period. You and your team will be working closely with the partner for many months. Being able to have a strong relationship will be paramount to your success. Utilizing a partner to maintain your legacy platforms during your cloud journey will enable you to put your most valuable asset, your people, on the project that will bring the most value to your organization, the cloud journey. As you decide upon the approach that will work best for you and your organization, remember to keep these keys in mind. Keep your governance structure unified across the cloud and the keeping the lights on team. Add the staffing plans into your communication plan and continue to keep your team updated. Choose the approach that fits your organization and strategy. Single team, split team, hybrid team, or partner. Part 3 of Navigate Your Cloud Journey, Jumpstarting with AMS, will provide a look into the advantages of using AWS's managed service, AMS, powered by Intervision. Before we conclude this webcast, I'd like to share a bit about the Intervision story and the journey we have taken with our clients. Intervision is a strategic service provider. Strategic service providers are solution providers who become strategic partners to customers, recommending and implementing everything from communication providers to which application platform and hardware providers to depend on. At Intervision, our mission is to unlock value for you by delivering innovative technology through a consultative approach. We do that by looking at the intersection of the right premises, the right technology, and the right model. Whether the premises are the cloud, hosted, or on premises, or a mixture of all three, the right technology, including digital infrastructure, resiliency, and digital communications from the right vendors for you, and the right model. Managed services, professional services, and self-service. It's that intersection that enables us to deliver value to you in your specific situation. Intervision began as a premier data center partner in Silicon Valley. We've grown organically as well as through acquisition. Some of the key acquisitions that we've made and the value they provide for you include our acquisition of Netelligent, a premier Cisco voice and networking provider. ITG, focused on the media, entertainment, and gaming industries. BlueLock, a leader in disaster recovery as a service. Infinity, a leading AWS partner. Seivu, with machine learning and artificial intelligence. And Fotis, with over 20 years of professional services in security and compliance. We have 125 certified engineers with over 200 cloud certifications, supporting over 80 different vendor technologies. That speaks again to the intersection of the right premises, the right technology, and the right model. We have offices across the United States and in India, which allows us to use a follow-the-sun methodology for operational support, making us available to you 24 by 7 by 365. In webcast 1, we discussed centers of excellence. Intervision ourselves has organized around centers of excellence. We have 7, including hosting, security, cloud consulting, AI and machine learning, communications, and infrastructure. Like the intersections of the 3 rights, many of these intersect with each other. Our COEs form the building blocks for the services we provide to you. Because our COEs matrix across the organization, we are able to leverage the expertise and the knowledge of all of our engineers in each service area. I mentioned earlier, we partner with over 80 different technology vendors. You'll see some of those brands here on this slide. However, what's important for you is the level at which we work with and partner with these technology companies. We are not only embedded deep within their engineering staff, but we have relationships at the executive level and often help drive their product roadmaps. Some of these logos may be familiar to you. However, I encourage you to look at the industries and the industry experience that we can bring to the table. Even if you don't find your specific industry listed here, you're probably in an industry that is an adjacent industry to one of these. We bring that deep expertise to providing the solutions and value to you. At Intervision, our vision is to transform your business through the evolutionary power of technology. Thank you very much for joining us today, and be on the lookout for part 3 in this series, Jumpstarting with AMS, available on intervision.com and on our YouTube channel. Until then, this is Jeff Tunn, Strategic IT Advisor for Intervision. Thank you.